Also, don't ask me to share my screen. I'm on Windows.
I don't know if you can be part of this conversation anymore.
Well,
But your shirt makes up for it, so it's fine.
Okay. Thank you. Love this shirt. I got it from Mr. John Romero himself.
Ah, nice.
Yeah. He's actually based in Ireland, in Dublin, and not in Dublin, in Galway. Sorry, in Galway, and he has a store that you can buy directly from him. These things, and yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we had him once on a community day in Ireland. In AWS community day in Ireland had John Romero, and there was a Doom deathmatch with him. So that was fun.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
No, those are fun little things to do.
Yeah.
I haven't actually played anything like that for years now. Last time was, I think, Unreal Tournament that I played with people.
Oh.
And I did get, and I played about, I think, 2 hours worth of Doom 4 before I stopped really gaming because of lack of time. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Just a quick question: what's better, this or this?
The first one.
First one, yeah.
This one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Slightly more blurry, but it's fine. I think. Yeah, I mean, we're not going for good looks today. I mean, I haven't even had time to shower this morning yet with all the running around and kids. Yeah.
Wow.
I never go for good looks. I tried.
we just do our charm, right? This is just the charm.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Cool. Yeah.
Let me quickly just open up a window. I just want to double check if we have any friends from Twitch on the channel. Let's just make sure let's just see. Because there's a good chance that, because I didn't really broadcast today because this week has been a bit crazy. See if people are joining. Yeah, I can see Darko is here. I can see I'm here. So yeah, we can literally just sit here and talk about anything we want.
I want to talk about something. I actually had a really nice time playing around with something yesterday. Was doing things with CDK and app config, because app config is a new thing I like to look into. So I was like spent a few hours yesterday about setting up a proper application, serverless application with CDK, and I used app config as configuration management or application configuration management and the things. And I got into this nice discussion with somebody on from AWS about, is introducing this another layer of complexity on top worth my time? Because absolutely, app config has a few features that are really cool, but are they actually the selling point? Are they actually the thing that will say, yes, I will spend X amount of man hours on this to implement this thing because it will make my life X and Y better? So this is also a very important thing when we talk about new features and new services to introduce to your existing workloads. Are they actually bringing enough value to invest time and effort in it? And that's a very interesting thing. Like I could have done everything, all of that without having to use app config at all. I could have done it through just proper CDK code and lambda function variables. But does this bring anything on top besides that to kind of make it worth my while? So I think it does. There are a few things out there for app config that it does, but I still need to make a clear picture. And especially when talking to people about it, I think it's very important that we also make that clear picture, because I think the folks that listen to us expect to say, hey, Darko, should I use this or no? And if I say yes, and this is why you should use it. So,
yeah. I mean, there's a thing. I used to be in consulting, and what we used to say in these kinds of situations clearly was, it depends. Since I'm at AWS, I try not to do that, because I really try to help understand how things work. And definitely it makes sense to dive into specific cases and understand the specific cases. And I think it's like always with management services. So basically services or features that help with managing things as opposed to building things. There's a balance between putting a lot of work and a lot of effort into the management of things versus getting to build something.
Yes.
And with rather small applications, it's really sufficient to have the configuration inside of the application, or in very simple terms, like just using the systems manager parameter store, for example, or environment variables. But once your application grows, using self-built things for these kinds of things becomes pretty quickly becomes really tedious. So that's where the management services come in, and that really help you automate away things that otherwise you would have to do manually all the time.
And this is the thing. This is what I'm looking at now with app config, and I'm working closely with the folks behind app config to kind of get this message across. Is what is this thing on top that helps me even in large scale management? What is this? What brings me the value? Because I'm abstracting parameter store with app config, right?
Well, you're abstracting it into versioned config changes. I think that's an important differentiation.
Correct, but you can also do that with vanilla parameter store. You can specify which version of a parameter you want, and that's fine. The only thing on top of here is the deployment procedure, because to deploy a change to an application with app config, you do not need to change the application or anything underneath. You can just trigger a deployment of a specific configuration item to a new version, and then that will, with its different deployment preferences, like canary deployments or linear deployments of app configurations themselves, that can bring you benefit. So that's the one benefit thing I see about app config compared to doing it just a vanilla approach. But again, this is something you need to think about when you're looking at things. Do I need this? Right? If I do, yeah. If I don't, that's fine. Right. So we have a question here from Lawrence, right?
Yeah. It's I think it was on previous section as well. The answer is still the same as last time, where we don't disclose any dates around when we launch specific services, because they're in the process of being rolled out based on internal priority. And the only advice I can give you here is keep an eye on the regional page to see when the services launch. Just quickly getting back to the app config thing, it's one of those things where, like you say now, it's like you don't know you need it until you need it today. Because I've seen many people able to get away with not worrying about this, because they don't have to when they do the deployments. If they don't often change the configs even, to be honest. Yeah. Because that's where it comes in. It's that whole when you've got your services they're running, you change the configs, you made a mistake, and then boom, everything drops. That's, I think, where the big value comes in.
One more thing I see on this one, for example, it's not just the configurations of applications or even feature toggles. It's more about, one of the things that app config can bring to the table is also and our friend Adrian would like to hear this as well, is also the ability to do chaos engineering. So one of the things I've done on my application, and actually I have it on GitHub, I want to do a video today about it, is that I have a little feature toggle that enables chaos on my application. And I'm able to deploy that chaos through deploying just a change in app config, right? I can just make a feature toggle on this little true or false, and it will basically enable chaos in my application. Of course, I need to enable or build the chaos myself, but just the fact that you can just pass a small feature or just a switch to your application in real time without ever having to actually deploy code. So you don't have to do...
You're mentioning something really important here: feature toggles.
Yes.
There's been a long ongoing discussion of feature branches versus trunk-based development, and trunk-based development for many organizations is really hard as long as they don't really use feature toggles.
Yeah. And
that's where this comes in, because this is where you really, by the flip of a switch or the call of an API, the even automated call of an API, you can turn on and turn off features. And this is where these kinds of tools really shine, because they help you do these things really easily instead of rolling them your own. As I said, exactly. if you build a small demo application, if you build a small prototype, it's probably not worth taking the time absolutely. To add another layer of complexity. But once you start building a production application, once you start building a development pipeline, and expect to roll out new versions of your application every now and then, it's really helpful to have something like app config in place.
And let me actually show you this to you. So here's what app config looks like. So this is one of my configurations of app config. I have this is my full configuration. It just does some limits results, but also I have chaos enabled, false, or well, in the other version is true, right? So basically what happens here is my Lambda function queries, queries these configurations from app config, and then if specific value, for example, where is it? Where's my chaos? Yes, it's chaos. So if this return item chaos is true, then I just do some chaos on it. And I control this not by actually deploying my code, but deploying a change to app config itself, which is pretty cool, I think. And you can kind of do this in stages. You don't have to deploy this at all things at once. And that's the benefit of app config, that once you deploy this feature toggle or whatever you call it, it deploys to a certain percentage of your workload, for example. So I found this really cool. I'm going to talk about this thing a bit more later on when I get the chance to record a small code shot video. But this is available now publicly if anybody wants to check out. Let me just paste it here if you're interested. Yeah, there we go. Cool. I must say, StreamYard works really nice. So
yeah, and there's very little lag, actually.
Yeah.
Actually, sorry, give me a second. I just want to get my windows right so I can double check the comments on the other side and just make sure we are seeing everything, because I did see a YouTube comment, just a quick wave from Simon come in saying thanks. Yeah, it looks like things are working. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, no, I really like this idea because configuration, I kind of find like when I still did consulting, when you walk into a new company, you've got these like almost Maslow's hierarchy of needs in terms of it normally starts with, hey, can we actually do automated builds? Just building the artifact, nothing else. Then next up is, okay, cool, can we do deployments? Then it's, okay, cool, have we got some kind of monitoring in place? Then have we got some kind of centralized logging? Then you start getting to, okay, how do we do config and secret management? And only after that tier did I found that companies start asking the question, okay, so how do we actually rotate our credentials? Because I found that very often they don't go through that exercise of saying, what do we do when we need to change these and rotate these? Often the answer is just, well, we'll update them and restart the app. Because once again, if that solves the problem, it's the least amount of work and it's not as risky, then go for it if you're comfortable with it. But that's something specifically I think where app config will actually be very nice to do.
Yeah. It's a neat service that not a lot of people talk about, and I think there's features of it that are very cool. So I'm actually going through this entire week trying to figure out how can I best implement it.
You've got a new toy, don't you?
Exactly. Like I'm trying to play with it as much as possible to kind of make it work with what I wanted to do, but still not make it relevant. Because here's the thing. I have my CDK code, and I deploy my application through it. Now, I don't deploy app config through it, because I would deploy app config through it. What difference does it make for me to change a code in CDK and just changing a Lambda variable and just changing app config? And that's the thing. I think the little deployment part of app config is the kind of a benefit, besides just doing validators. So app config supports this thing called validators, which can actually validate, is your current configuration change valid? So just from the
that's nice.
Is it an int? Or you can do even more advanced things by actually checking, is this a good value or not? But you can also do that in CDK, right? With just generic programming logic. So I'm trying to figure it out how to best position it, because I'm a big fan of GitOps and doing everything through, your command line and clicking less. So yeah, it should be pretty much interesting.
There's an interesting question by Lawrence on Twitch, whether game servers such as Fortnite use EKS to host game service.
I think the answer to that one is it entirely depends on what the customer runs on. There's some customers that use EKS for applications. There are some customers that use it for games. From our perspective, we generally don't go look into customer accounts to see what they're using unless there's a reason or unless we're engaging with them. So asking that, I honestly don't even know. I've never had reason to go poke around and have a look. And also, even if we wanted to, we would need to get customer permission, and then on our side, go through the whole approval process, because we can't just jump into accounts. We simply don't have access.
But still, as a general question, if game service such as Fortnite use EKS, yes, definitely. So there are a lot of AWS game customers in the computer game industry who use EKS or ECS, so our container-based orchestration services, for running their services. This is a very valid approach. Yes, definitely.
Sorry, just quickly typing a question out here.
And I mean, it's really, if you think about it, a game like Fortnite, which has to scale in and out extremely quickly based on the players in the game, and the number of players is changing all the time. I don't really know the amounts of players and the curves underneath that, but I guess it's really a lot. And what they really benefit from is the elasticity of the cloud, and especially with containers, or maybe even having part of the application being run through Lambda functions. You're really able to quickly, instantaneously react to new players coming into the game, players going off the game, quitting the game, and you don't need those resources for them to be idle. And that's where container services and Lambda functions really shine. So really are great, because you have the immediate elasticity.
And here's the thing, like, it's not, I mean, Lawrence asked, is it needed to host a game server? It's not. You can do it wherever, right? It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
EKS, a service, or Kubernetes helps in doing that. And if you have built your game service around the Kubernetes thing, right? But again, it's not something that's required for Fortnite to be available in the Africa region, for example.
Yeah, right. And that's the follow-up question by Lawrence. If once EKS gets launched in the Africa region, of course, it's up to our customers to launch their servers on our infrastructure. And I would assume that Epic Games with Fortnite will definitely try to bring the servers as close to the players as possible. But I cannot speak for Epic Games or Fortnite, of course.
So, quick side note, I'm so happy that I actually wore shoes today. I just found this little friend inside my shoe now.
Wow. How did that happen? What did you do?
Just in the driveway, our Boken Villa. It's a local plant. It's got a lot of thorns. Doesn't need a lot of water, so we tend to. And I've got 2 or 3 of them in the garden. I realized I obviously stepped on a branch at some point, so I'm lucky that I didn't lose my foot there. So yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. What else has been fun this week? I had quite a fun meetup last night, because the meetup was at 7 and my power went away at 6. And due to testing earlier this week, I found that the UPS for my networking gear is able to last an hour and 30 minutes. So it's a case of we were sitting in the dark, trying to get the kids to bed, and then at just before 7, switching that on, sitting here with my little recording light. Where's the other one? Got these little LED lights that so that's why you can actually see me at the moment, because my overhead lights don't work. Literally rushed through the demo, sitting here semi in the dark with a blurry screen. Oh, that's also, by the way, why my screen is so blurry today, as I'm using the laptop, or not the laptop, the webcam, instead of my normal camera, because cables and things are not yet sorted out properly here.
But you have power now, right?
I don't have power. I've got a generator with a 20-meter extension lead going out into the garden to said generator at the moment, through the corridor with carpets on it, just to make sure that people can't trip. So this is a very ghetto DIY at the moment.
Oh man! And do you expect power to come back today, or?
The thing there is we don't know. It's literally because we had a big storm over the weekend that broke a couple of trees and the branches. So we've had issues with power. Then on top of that, we have what we call load shedding. So every day at the moment, I have either 1 or 2.5 hour slots where the power is just off. And what happened last night is we had our session, and then when it came back on again, there was a surge, and that took out something in about a 2-3 block radius where I live. So it's not the whole neighborhood; it's just a subsection of it, and something now is broken, and we've got no idea when they're going to fix it. So it's literally a case of when I'm done with this stream, I'm unplugging my keyboard and then, unplugging the computer for power, and then plugging in the fridge and the freezer, because otherwise the food's going to go off. And then then I'm going to try and figure out how I can wire up at least some lights, because the kids obviously are not enjoying this sudden change. And why are there no lights at night when we want to go have a bath? So it's going to be fun. So some interesting problems that aren't technical for a change.
Also, I used to live through a part of my life where we had common blackouts. So like it was every 2 hours we had blackouts. So I remember the fact that you couldn't watch a movie. Like you would, if you didn't start watching a film when it started, you just have to get used to it. Just that's fine. I'm gonna just watch half of it or something like that. But not the best of things in the world. Yeah, still technical problems, but I think the different kind of tech here.
But the fun thing now for me is I'm already starting to think, how can I now hook the generator output, because I've ordered some son-off switches to be able to monitor the power usage.
Okay.
Not to use the switching functionality, purely just to get the power throughput, because I think they're 15 amps a pop, and I can run 2 of them in parallel because I won't be drawing more than that. And I want to start using the IoT services that we have to put that, and then start graphing it and maybe set up a quick side dashboard. Because it feels like this is something where you can get some very interesting data out of how are you actually using your power and where is it going.
Yep, I think that's very cool. And also, can you balance your power between different things automatically, or is it very manual by unplugging and plugging in stuff?
When you mean balance between 3 phases, or
no, I mean balancing between, like, for example, if you decided not to power your fridge anymore, can you automatically switch it off somehow and reroute the power from your generator to something else, or is it just
Well, see, that's not where the fun part comes in. So my house is a little bit more complicated because it's old. It was, not for locally, it's old because it was built in the 1930s. Please don't judge us, because I know you two are from Europe, and Europe old is a bit older than that. So for us, this is an old house. It's actually using 3-phase power, not 2-phase. So all my appliances are on the 1 phase, and then all the lights are on the 2nd phase, and then the 3rd phase is for the geyser and 1 or 2 other things, I think. So from that perspective, the generator itself is single phase, and it's got 2 outputs, 15 amps each. So I'm going to wire it so there you go to the 2 phases that need power, because my geyser off when there's power outage is not really an issue. That's something we can sort out at some other point. And then what I want to do is you can get then smart switches to say, okay, cool, now individual appliances, what is on or what is able to be on, at least. Whether it's on or on at that point is a different question. It's just that's what I want to use the son-offs for as well, is once I've actually started measuring where the thing is, I'm going to install them, for example, for the fridge, is to say, okay, cool, when the kettle goes on, you can't do the fridge and that kind of thing, because obviously that's where power management issues come in.
Okay, cool. Welcome to the AWS office hours, where we discuss power outages and generate 3-phase power supplies.
and how to deploy this on Kubernetes, because obviously
exactly.
deploy this on Kubernetes to make it a legit solution.
Speaking of old houses, I think my apartment block was built in 1901, so it's old, but it's not Berlin old. There's older stuff in Berlin.
Yeah, definitely. But what I was going to say is last night's meetup was quite fun. It was I was busy putting Terraform into CI/CD pipeline as a demo, and I'm going to take that further now, because the part where I got stuck that I need to spend a bit more time on still is to take the output and actually write it as a PR, because once again, it's one of those trade-off things where if I do it, everything inside code build, it means I don't have to share credentials outside of the build job to be able to create infrastructure, and I can limit it very severely with obviously the IAM policy and role that I apply to that job. But on the flip side, then I need to create an OAuth token to allow, for example, a Lambda, and I'm thinking about building a centralized Lambda to then be able to post comments to GitHub PR issues. Because I want to take the Terraform output and actually, and the same with CDK and CloudFormation at some point, and actually write it on the PR saying, boom, this is the infrastructure change you want to make. But then you need to be able to communicate, do a normal post directly to GitHub from what I see at the moment. The alternative is doing it with GitHub Actions, because there's some nice Terraform stuff, but then there's quite a lot of scaffolding. But then you have to put your AWS credentials on the GitHub side. It's like,
true.
To
by the way,
how to.
On Tuesday, I was on a meetup in Dublin, and we had Yevgeny Brickman with us. I'm not sure if you heard of the chap. He's the owner of Gruntwork, but he wrote the book Terraform and Up and Running, one of the first Terraform books I actually read, and he gave a really nice presentation on how to do testing with Terraform. so it's really cool. I'll share that presentation as well. It's really cool, and I think I did the same thought. I did it on the same meeting. I didn't talk on testing CDK and CloudFormation, and I thought that CDK Terraform has really robust testing systems out there when it comes to unit end-to-end testing and all those things. So pretty neat. I'll share the link as well.
If you go dig into some of the Terraform hosted modules, there's a testing directory normally, and there's some very interesting things happening in there. I've just dipped into a little bit. I know it comes, because a lot of it looks familiar from the Ruby world /Chef world that I come from, where we always had like inspec and those kind of tests running. Wait, sorry.
That doesn't work.
You need. I've disabled links. You need to paste it via the StreamYard interface because we had. Yeah, sorry. Links are disabled if you're in the chat because we had some people spamming us a while back, which is a little bit annoying. There we go. Now you're posting it as me. Please don't say anything mean.
Yeah, and that the good thing with this is that it's being posted to YouTube and Twitch at the same time.
Yes. Let me just then put this as well. Comment here, Terraform.
Yeah, so I mean, it's so for our viewers, I haven't even said welcome to the AWS Africa office hours where we talk about power generation, as Darko mentioned. Instead of, we'll start talking about a little bit more technical topics now. If you're interested, we are going to be running this on a weekly basis now. I've spoken to our marketing team, and we're not going to try and keep it. And the idea now is that we're going to start rotating different people in and out. Today was a bit of a last-minute scramble, so. Thank you both, Dennis and Darko, for joining me on short notice. I had a bit of a chaotic 2 days to try and figure things out. But yeah, so the idea is we're going to rotate different people in. I'm busy working with our solution architect managers as well, because I want to get some of the solution architects in to talk about what we see local customers doing, because I think that's also a fun one. So maybe what we can do is if any of you have like an interesting tech story about a customer that we can talk about a little bit while we wait for some questions to come in.
Tech story about a customer. I can talk about things that are not customer related, but are actually my work related, and because I think it's more better to share a problem that I've experienced, and maybe we can. I mean, the best thing about sharing a problem is actually to talk about, hey, what could have we done to avoid that? And here's a very simple thing. A person I used to work with. We ran our own internal IT full on mail servers and the gist, right? And we had a rack of SAN storage. SAN storage, and that was all of everything we had was running on that rack or that cluster of SAN storage. And this person I work with basically at one point says, like, you know what, we should be security focused. We need to be security aware. And there's a new patch out for our SAN system, for the firmware. I need to patch it immediately. And then he patched it on a Wednesday noon, lunchtime. And then both controllers crashed. And we lost SAN for the next 2 days. No, nothing. Literally, all IT infrastructure was completely down for 2 days. Now, the smart answer here would be don't do patching on Thursdays, but is that the solution? It is in my case, but that was a really bad, screw up. But I get that some people get security focused too much, like, we need to patch everything immediately because it's a 0-day patch, or even if it's not a 0-day patch, it's a security vulnerability. I'm too scared, I'm too anxious to have a non-patch system running in my environment. Is that okay to patch it immediately, or you have to kind of respect some governance and high availability stuff and those things? I mean, this was unfortunate that both of the things crashed at the same time. They should not, but as Werner says, everything crashes all the time, or everything fails all the time, breaks all the time. Yeah. There you go. So I think it's I think it's very interesting to discuss all those things.
No, it's definitely, and what I found is, like, with the cloud, that's one of the main benefits for me, is the ability to be able to spin up new copies. So if you want to go the immutable infrastructure route, just spin up an entire new version of whatever, let's say, you want to run, make sure it's working, and then flip over to the new one. You pay for that period to have both in the running, but that's normally cents or dollars that you're talking about. Right. But I mean, on the SAN one, I learned an interesting lesson with regard to RAID arrays a few years back. where I just got myself a little HP mini server. It's got 4 little disks that you can put in. So I got 4 brand new, I think it was 4 terabyte drive. Oh no, 1 terabyte drives at that time. Jeepers, this is actually 8-9 years ago. I realized I'm getting old.
Wow.
And what had happened is I'd bought 4 drives from the same brand at the same time from the same vendor and slotted them in, set up RAID 5, because RAID 5, you've got 1 parity drive, so your data's safe, right? Except a couple of years down the line, the one drive started failing. And then I'm like, okay, cool, this isn't a problem. I've got RAID 5, I've got alerting, I'm sorted. Swap out the drive, put a new one in, and as it's busy restoring, the other drives fail. So the lesson that I learned here is that if you are setting up something like a RAID 5 array, buy different brand drives, or if you are on a specific brand, buy different batches, because if the drives are produced in the same batch, they're likely going to be failing within roughly the same time period, given the same type of things that make them fail, which was a very interesting, hard lesson to learn because I lost everything.
I think somebody mentioned that once, how you should actually build proper disk arrays, like big old racks, when you receive a package of disks. I think like you put disks interchangeably from different batches into the array or in some specific pattern, just to avoid this, because at scale this becomes a problem, right? So you can just imagine having a bad batch, and there's a bad batch. It's nothing that the manufacturer is wrong for. It's just manufacturing.
It happens.
Yeah. And imagine having a full-on disk array or a storage array, which is horrible disks, right? So that would be a potentially big problem. But that's a very interesting point, I would say. Yeah. Make sure to pick disks from different, I wouldn't say manufacturers maybe, but maybe different batches.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's an interesting comment there from Venkat. Let me pop it on the screen for us, which is basically saying that seen customers never update firmware until it's critical or their scheduled downtime. Yeah. So there is a balance between not being first and not being last. And I think there's definitely an inverse correlation with the amount of time you've been in the industry with how quickly you want to install new patches. Because you after being burnt like for the 7th, 8th time, you're probably going to say, okay, do I really need this? And at some point you verge from being the cautious, responsible person into the not as responsible anymore, because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. But it's hard that it's so hard to get that right.
That's where you actually start to read the patch notes to understand, is it a crucial change? Do I really need to deploy this now? Or could I wait? Maybe not be the first to weed out the bugs that might be in the patch. Yeah,
I had to fight battles where this manager of mine used to call me like at 6 p.m. in the evening, like, patch Tuesday is today. Why aren't our servers patched? Exactly, that's why they're not patched. So it's very important that we understand that there is a sense of urgency in patching things, but it's also not that critical. Most of the time.
I mean,
caveat.
Actually implemented an interesting solution for customers on that a while back, which was on Sundays we would bake new AMIs. So take whatever the new version of Linux or Windows is, patch it up to whatever standard we wanted. And then on the Monday, what you did is you updated that was the launch config before launch templates on the autoscaling group. Flip it out to the new version. You still keep the old one around. And then you just double up your capacity, because then code deploy takes over, deploys the code, brings it into the load balancer, checks that everything is working. And once you actually see that it's working, you just scale down again to the normal size, because then you set your auto-scaling group to evict the oldest instances first. And that's how you would then flip out, do auto-patching of your hosts without having to patch on the host. Because I used to be a chef's person, like I said, so I'm used to patching hosts while they're running. It wasn't a big thing. That's what you did. And this way it's like, it either comes up and it works or it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, you just switch back to the old launch config, tear down the new instances you brought up, and then figure out what is wrong. And it was actually a very low effort one, because we had set it up that Monday mornings was dev. I think Tuesday mornings or Tuesday or Monday afternoons was like testing, because dev and testing weren't really an issue if anything broke. And then we had like a proper UAT staging environment and then production. And we left like a day gap to that, and then did production on Thursdays, because then we still had a bit of load on Friday to make sure that it's working. But I mean, you can shift them around for whatever you work, and it's very little effort at the end of the day.
I have a really interesting question that came from one of my Twitch viewers a few days back, and this is kind of a question when it comes to AMIs. You mentioned building AMIs, so So here's his question. I was wondering if I could get a tiny bit of advice on something with EC2 bootstrapping on Windows. We are seeing some increased complexity in our user data scripts. So at what point do they switch over to baking AMIs or doing something else? So this is a very thing. We like to talk about user data like being the end-all solution when using EC2, but no, it can get complex like crazy. So
I've got a very strong opinion on this.
Okay.
The only things you should be putting in your user data is, for example, things like if it connects to a cluster or if it's some config to connect to something. You don't use user data to install code or install packages. The problem is that it's similar to using Docker latest code where at that point in time, it depends what is available that comes up. So let's say you've got this fleet of servers with version 1.34 installed. Now you bring up a new one over here, and now that one doesn't install. All of a sudden, it's 1.35. And as Dennis mentioned, if you didn't read the release notes or if you didn't pin the version, and even if you pin the version, I've been in situations where that version is being pulled because of a severe bug or something. And now you literally just have this flapping going on over here with instances coming up and down because they can't install. So they're pre-bake.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not just a version conflict. It's also is the repository available at all? So you have a dependency on an external resource. If that's not available for whatever reason, I mean, it's one of the fallacies of distributed computing. The network is not always available, and you might not be able to download the patch or whatever you need to download to finish your instance. So bake as much. I mean, the golden image used to be an anti-pattern back in the day when we shrink-wrapped software. So where we had one image and then we produced our DVDs or our CDs from that for the next 24 months. But today, the golden image is really something that you can rebuild. Basically constantly, all the time, that you can rebuild and draw your current deployments from that image and have baking an image as part of your pipeline, and you can test the availability of the repositories as part of your pipeline. You should not test the availability as part of your deployment.
So this is what I had a customer, an AWS customer way back when. So they had a big old setup running EC2 instances in an auto-scaling group, and they were baking AMIs. And this is way before things such as Image Builder existed. So they were using Packer and a whole lot of things. So one of their parts of their infrastructure was constant testing. So they want to make sure that their system is completely resilient, something like chaos engineering. But what they did is they constantly terminated one instance in that entire chain, and they had to replace it. So every minute a new instance was coming up, just to make sure that it's able to be bootstrapped. If it fails, a lot of alarms go away, because you do not want to fail when you need to scale, right? That rhymes. So you want to make sure that the failure actually happens at some unimportant time that you can react to it. And also what they did is they constantly built new images as they did it. To an extent, right? They built it using the same thing, the same code and everything. They just wanted to make sure they have all the dependencies there. So it was a big old, constantly moving machine that was doing something, but it was testing things in real time to make sure it works. So I agree here. External dependencies are the bane of our existence. And you want to make sure that your production systems have as little external dependencies as possible. When I say external dependencies, things you have trouble controlling or things you have trouble avoiding. So when I say a package, you can avoid an external dependency for a package by using code artifact, for example. Code artifact, if you use NPM or Python packages, it can basically cache those things in your AWS account. So, or just even bake images.
And I'm sorry.
Go.
Yeah, one of the best practice, or one better practice definitely, is to not just pull the latest version of whatever. Have defined version numbers, because only then you can be sure that you get what you think you get. Because especially with Docker, if you pull a Docker image and you just pull the latest, all of a sudden you might even have a different Linux distribution underneath. Because somebody changed that. So always know which specific versions you're gonna pull.
Or so with that, I mean, ECR now has that little immutable flag for the different tags that you upload, and it's actually super useful because it immediately means that latest is no longer useful because you can't keep re-uploading latest. And I actually had this with once again also with a company that I worked with at one point where someone copy pasted the nice infrastructure as code, which had a pipeline for building the container, and they didn't replace the name because they literally cut and pasted the name over because they were too they didn't understand how to configure things, and then uploaded this new service, built the image and pushed it to the other services repo, and all of a sudden that was then deployed because of the latest tag. And we were sitting there going like, we don't understand where if you build a new version, it works, and then all of a sudden at some point it starts breaking completely, and then it works again. It's just like, yeah, it was an interesting one to do. So that would have, if you would have at least seen something happening there if you did disable the allowing latest.
Yeah,
but I mean, specifically on the packages, one other thing, for example, is to also like, if you, let's say you use the Java runtime, to put that on S3 and install from there rather than pulling it from the public side the whole time. Because a few years back, they actually put all the old versions behind a login wall. And once again, that was still my chef days. I just saw this dashboard go red, like, and nothing could spin up because we were pulling down Java using user data when the instance spun up. So,
so there was this also. Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just popped up that question too quickly just now. So here it is. It's an interesting question that Vel posed here. Does the shared responsibility model only relate to security and compliance, or does it extend to other pillars like ops, operational excellence, etc.? We usually talk about the shared responsibility model specifically in the security context because that is where it carries the most weight. But there is a shared responsibility model in all the pillars that we have because we take care of some of the things for you. We do operate the infrastructure underneath, and we do a lot of monitoring and a lot of automation and all these kinds of things. So operational excellence is very much about automation, observability, monitoring, and so forth. Yes, we do a lot of that for you, and we provide you with the tools to do that on top of it. So we monitor the hardware infrastructure. We monitor the hypervisors, and then we give you the tools to, on top of that, monitor your applications, monitor your code, your vCPUs, and so forth. So the same goes for other pillars like cost optimization or resiliency. We do take care of a lot of things for you, especially on the infrastructure layer, on the physical hardware layer, and on the bottommost virtualization layer, OS and virtualization layer. And then on top of that, it's up to you. So using the cloud, many big corporations, and before I joined this team, I used to be a solutions architect with AWS for a large global customer. And they had this very situation where they did not really have DevOps teams. They had an operational team. They had their IT infrastructure team. And this team had to deal with lots of on-premises infrastructure, which was being run and maintained together with what they do on AWS. And there are certain overlaps, but there is still a lot that we as AWS were able to take away from them as a burden, as something that had to take care of. And that's why they always continued migrating more and more from their existing infrastructure into AWS, because that's where they had less work, but even more visibility, more security, more operational mechanisms. And so yes, I don't know if this answers the question. I don't really know if there is a question apart from if there are any thoughts that are my thoughts on that.
So I definitely have some thoughts here, and it's one thing that I've seen successfully implemented in companies is specifically around infrastructure as code, because often we feel that that just means anybody can create any kind of infrastructure on a system, where what you can actually do is have these teams that are responsible, for example, for the databases and creating the RDS instances, go create a module or a stack for you that you can use depending on what tool you're using. They can then inside that module do things like enable encryption at rest, enable the database backups that they have to be with whatever configuration you need for your compliance, etc. Then take those modules and make them available to the end user and the individual teams to actually use. because that way you make it easy to do the right thing. They are responsible for defining what are the compliance checks we need to adhere to, and you as a team can say, well, when we spin up a database, as long as we use this module, we know that we will be within it because they've configured it to do what it's supposed to be doing. And that actually enables the teams to go faster, because then security knows that, hey, as long as you use the modules, and there are also ways you can actually enforce this in your infrastructure as code tools. You can do checks to say, listen, are you using modules, or are you creating raw resources? As soon as you try and do a raw resource, it just kicks it out of the build system and says, sorry, this isn't allowed. And do it on that level, because then the teams can go a lot faster.
Yeah, and this is something where you can, especially in larger organizations where you have lots of accounts, production accounts, but also testing and maybe even experimentation accounts. The customer that I worked for, they basically had a self-service provisioning service for all of their employees, so everybody could basically pull their own experimental AWS account. They could do anything in there for experimenting, but once they wanted to work with actual production environments, there were many things in place. They had their centralized operational team, they had their centralized security team, and they took care of these of the live accounts, of the production accounts, and people weren't able to just start or stop an RDS inside of a production account, but they could. And they could even try out many new services inside of an experimental account that they could pull for themselves.
No, definitely. Quick question. We've got one from Brian Mweni, who was asking about the associated exam, questions about new services crop up. Now, the answer to this one applies to all of the exams, where there's normally a 6-month period before questions will make it into the exam. So, for example, we know a lot of things are announced at reInvent, so they aren't added to the exam within 6 months before then. So you can see that. And also, we're very explicit. If you go to the exam itself, what the content is, and then it'll say this is the new exam that has a new set of questions that need to be answered. Or sorry, new topics that you will need to be able to answer. So no, don't worry about just studying for an exam. Something gets launched last week and you need to be able to answer it. We don't do that. It's a bad customer experience.
Yes, and the same goes for changes in features. Sometimes in the exam, we ask for specific features, like what is the limit of service X? Like we have certain limits. We have some soft limits, some hard limits on services, and very rarely these are being asked because they are subject to change. And having a question like this on the exam where you don't know if we expect outdated information as an answer wouldn't make any sense. So we rarely ask about very new services, or we don't ask about very new services until they have been around for 6 months or more. And we rarely ask about very specific technical limitations because
Correct.
We are well aware of the fact that it increases all the time.
And also there's a specific group of people that kind of gather and make those questions after a while, because you cannot get the service team that just built the product build the questions as well, because the questions actually come from experienced solution architects, people in the training organization who make those questions available even after they have already gotten familiar with a bunch of services or concepts. So it's not immediate. There's no magic question generator from our source code. So yeah.
Yeah. So we look quickly. Yeah. Okay, now we're up to date with the questions. Sorry, I just wanted to quickly scan to make sure, because I'm running at quarter capacity today.
There's a lot of people on stream. I'm pretty happy, and thank you all for the questions. Yeah, and feel free to ask anything. I mean, this is an ask me anything basically. Well, hope asterisks, right?
Ask me any AWS technical questions.
Yes. And even power related questions in South Africa. Yes. Ask Opus.
I had a massive deep dive earlier this week, because it's basically I went, okay, cool. So we've got 3-phase power. I want to be able to, let's say, power the lights and power the computers, because thumbsuck estimate, I need about 2,000 watts. Then started looking at battery capacities. Then went into, okay, how deep can you cycle a battery? How many batteries you need? What the different types of batteries are? And then I stopped at the point where I started reading about what was the parasitic discharge or something. So the system itself, it needs a certain amount of it to run. I've learned something interesting. There's a specific brand, Victron inverters, because that's the other problem is your inverter limits. in terms of obviously what you can output to the system. And if you've got three phases, you need to worry about, do I go one phase or three phase inverter? But this one brand, like I said, Victron, I don't know if other brands have it, it's just the one that I found that had it, is the ability to hook up to 6 of them with communication cables, and then either have them all 6 on one phase, or I think 2 on each of the 3 phases. And then they can work together from a single battery system, I think. But yeah,
But you need these. You need deep cycle batteries for these things, right? These are not just standard. I mean,
it's one of those
you
like
kind of spend them, right? Yeah.
Well, the thing is, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to cover just the gaps that you're going to get, which means you need a lot less capacity? Because or do you want to be off grid with solar panels, etc.? It's like I would just went like, this is complex. There's a lot here.
Yeah.
We have another question here.
Well, it's sometimes it's attribute error. Non-type object has no attribute get. Mr. Tighty, if you have that SAM template on GitHub, maybe we can have a look. But it's most likely you have defined a property or to something that has not the thing get thing. I don't know. Like I'm not sure where is it actually failing. So it could be a lot of things. And this brings me to me working in premium support in AWS. We used to get a lot of questions like this, and we're super happy to help you discuss. But we need to see a bit more. Unfortunately, this is not such a common thing.
I keep forgetting, Darker, you're coming up on your 5 years at AWS soon, aren't you?
Yes, in 6 months. 6 months, I'll get the new badge. I'll get the yellow badge. So 5 years. This is the company I've been with the longest. I think before that, my longest engagement was 2.5 years. And with AWS, I truly feel like a built-in feature. So for a while now, and after 5 years, you kind of get into it. I mean, I know there's been people who have been much longer here, but 5 years in Amazon is pretty old. And we have this tool internally called Old Fart that you can check how long are you in Amazon or percentage wise. I believe I'm in the top 10% or something like that. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, when it comes to like age, I'll try to find it.
Yeah, but the great thing is in Amazon and AWS, I have not been here that long. It's not even been a year now, but still, you get around a lot. You can really, if you find something that interests you, you will definitely find the role that fits, that you are the best fit for, and that is the best fit for you.
Correct. Yeah. I moved 4 roles. I basically became a premium support engineer. I've moved to solution architecture, then to specialized specialist solution architecture, and now to a developer advocate or technical evangelist, or however you call it. So pretty happy. Pretty happy.
That's where we grow. That's where we grow old now.
This is where you come to start a family, right?
Yeah.
So for those just not familiar with it, it's quite fun. So we've got our badges that we used to badge into the office and everywhere for security. And you start with a blue badge, and then once you hit 5 years, you transition to it's a yellow badge, but it's a dark, not quite orange, but it's a darker yellow or a color. And then after that, when you hit 10 years, you go into the red badge. Then 15 is purple, and then 20 is gray.
Gray, yeah. So I'm in the top. I'm in the top 7.14%. So
that's crazy.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Like
I'm check.
Yeah, we have really grown over the years, and we're still hiring. We're hiring all over the place. Yeah, we have many roles to fill.
People ask me this, like when, please, can you let me know when you guys are hiring? I'm like, we're always hiring. Literally, you can always find a position at AWS.
I can't.
You can. It's Amazon.jobs, I believe, is the URL. Let me just grab it quickly. I'll pop it in the chat for us. Oh, you're also grabbing it.
You got it. I'll post it to you.
I'm going to put my hands here and make that I watch that. Did you see how I posted that with my hands off the keyboard?
Yeah, right.
That's a joke.
Oh, that's one of the things that I still actually did that on stage once. Is I had a demo from Martin Beebe on our team had built one on how to get started with CDK, and it's an awesome deck because every single demo is pre-recorded as an embedded video. But it's So up front, you obviously, when you practice the talk, you go through exactly what's going to happen. So you go stand in front of your laptop when you're presenting and pretend that you're typing the first time. And then here by the third time, I was mid-stage and I realized I need to type. So I pretend as if I'm typing. And then people are like, okay, this isn't right. It looks live.
Yeah. But getting back to Amazon jobs, if you find anything that's interesting in there, any job that interests you, and you want to know anything about it or about Amazon in general and AWS, just get in touch with Darko or Cobus or myself. We really, we can talk about it. We can chat.
Yeah, I mean, especially most of the time, our managers, the specific hiring managers, are also happy to jump on a call and have a quick coffee chat with you about the role and what it is about. Even if you're just curious and interested, maybe to find out what it is you'll be doing. Because especially in Cape Town, we actually have quite a lot of different departments running there. Often people aren't fully aware of it, but we've got EC2, so the people actually building the backbone for EC2, capacity planning, etc. A couple of those roles. Some of the VPC teams are based in Cape Town. Then we have premium support. Cloud engineering, there's even Kindle support on the Amazon side. So there's a difference, obviously, between Amazon and Amazon Web Services, two completely different companies. We've got Kindle support there as well. So there's quite a lot going on in Cape Town if you're interested.
Darko isn't moving anymore?
Yeah, I think either that or,
shocked.
Or, yeah. He's checking out to move to Cape Town.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is his eyes aren't shut at the moment where he froze. He doesn't. Alejandra's dog. I'll put that up on here. Alejandra is a colleague of ours in the US, and she's got a really nice Labrador, and he got a blue badge as well. Yes. Oh, there's actually a thing that's called Dogs at Amazon. So many people, many employees of Amazon have dogs. Most of our offices really allow bringing the dogs, and there are also some videos on YouTube, on the YouTube channel, on the Amazon official Amazon channel on YouTube, with all kinds of dogs that we have in the headquarters in Seattle.
Also, I think too, just for those that if you do bump into Alejandra at some point, so her dog is a service dog. So always, if you aren't familiar with it, when you see a dog and it's it'll be clearly marked and says service dog. Always chat to the owner first before you start petting the dog, because I know that sometimes is remember they're working animals. They're not. It's literally like someone walking into your office and comes and rubs your head, or offers you a coffee while you're in the middle of a conference call. But having said that, chat to her, ask if she can when there's the next break, because Canela does have breaks every now and then, and that's the most fun. Is like she's like literally sits there, and then Alejandra says the word. I'm not going to say it now. It's up to her to share it with you, and then she knows, okay, now it's play mode, and that is the most fun. So Dennis, if you haven't actually experienced that, definitely chat to her when you see her in person. It's so much fun playing with Canela.
Yeah, looks like Darko has dropped out. Maybe he has got a power outage now.
That would be amusing. Yeah, so I've got the fun thing now where I now need to go read up the manual and see how much petrol the generator is going to eat, just so I know when to refill it and plan that outage and all that. So that's one advantage of obviously going with a solar powered system. But the disadvantage is that solar power systems are very, very expensive. I mean, I think just for the basic covering of the house to keep it running for 5 hours at a time, because at the moment we get 2.5 hour outages a day. So I need at least be able to run for 5 hours continuously if the two are back to back. And for that, I think it looked like converting it quickly, 3,000 euros minimum. Wow. So it's a big chunk of money.
Yeah, there's an interesting question by Brian again about the secret about the AWS network that makes it way faster than other global network ISPs. Maybe there's 2 points to that, or two ways to answer that question. One, the most important thing is we are not an ISP, so we don't route traffic of all kinds of customers through our network. Only the ones who are actually customers of AWS. So we are only routing internal traffic. And the second is, it's only us using this network. So we have our own infrastructure. We have our own wires across the oceans between the continents. Inside of the regions, we have very high bandwidth fiber laying, and only we are using that. So if you use AWS based resources, like for instance the CDN, Amazon CloudFront, once you are inside of our infrastructure, you don't have to compete about the bandwidth with millions of other people who are using the same line, like it is with an ISP. With an ISP, you are we have a dedicated network that is run and maintained by ourselves, by AWS, and you as our customers are exclusive users of this bandwidth. This is why we have a much more reliable and much faster network than if you would route through the public internet, because then you compete with all kinds of other data packets that are on the wires.
I've just pasted a link about a great talk from James Hamilton, our distinguished engineer, about our global networks. This is from 2016, so it's a bit dated, but it's a great overview of how our global network looks and works. So do check it out. It's a really nice talk.
Awesome.
And it's super nice to listen to James.
There's also a very interesting thing that I learned is that the fiber cables in Australia are different to the fiber cables elsewhere in the world because they have ants that specifically eat the plastic from the cables. So they need a special shielding on their cables to protect them. It's like Australia's got some very funky animals that eat things.
Australia is crazy. It's just crazy. Australia as a continent, I've heard, is out to kill whatever.
So I know that I used to live in a country where we were specifically bottlenecked by internet cables, and if one would break, and it would happen, like the entire island would lose internet. That's it. Like no internet for 24 hours, and it was an interesting experience in 2018, or 2016.
Yeah, no, it's we still have that because in South Africa we've got a bunch of better cables now. We've got more cables, but we used to only have the SAT3 cable effectively about like even 4 years ago. And if that thing went down, and I mean undersea cables break, then the country would pretty much have almost no internet.
But do you have overland cables like going to Namibia or Botswana or something like that?
Not really, because remember, Africa is huge. A lot of people don't fully understand and appreciate it. So to put it in context, if I flew pretty much in a straight line up to Amsterdam, now granted, Amsterdam is at the top of, the chunk of Europe there. That's a 12-hour flight. And I know you can fly from both corners of Europe in probably about 3 or 4 hours. I think 6 hours is like a terrible flight.
Wow.
So
yeah. That's true.
It's fun.
So we got 2 more questions quickly.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. We're right about finished.
Yeah. So quick question about, are we expecting an IoT speciality in future? Answer is not that I'm aware of. I mean, it's one of those things we always are evaluating what makes sense and what type of certifications we want to bring up. Given the interest in IoT, I would expect it to make sense, but I don't have any specific information about that at this point in time.
Just real quick regarding the image, open image in new tab. Here we go. Regarding the question about it wasn't a question about the size of Africa. I just saw this picture not long ago. I'll post it in the chat. I just saw this. Oh, I can't. I'll post it.
You have to with StreamYards.
Yeah. Here we go. Which is really surprising if you look at it, where because of the Mercator projection that we usually use to project the globe on a flat surface, where you really can see how large Africa really is compared to other continents, in fact.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's weird when they put Greenland being larger than Africa, and it's like, not by a long shot. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This question from Mr. Osap GMP. Does the lowering of the scale up trigger of autoscaling group improve the page loading speed in a website, say CPU, from 60 to say 30%? Let me give you the great answer of it depends. So, so here's the thing, like, depending on what is actually loading your page website. Is it some active process in the backend which requires a lot of CPU utilization, or is it just loading static things? If it's static things, this should not matter. So best practice in any way would be to host static things away from your EC2 instances, let's say on S3 or a CTN, and then host all of your active elements on an EC2 instance in an autoscaling group. Now, the scale up trigger, again, really depends on how power hungry is your application. If your backend application for a single process requires 50% of CPU utilization in a longer span of time, then it will help. But if it is just like a chunk, no, it should not, right? So you should always, when it comes to modifying the scale up trigger and scale down triggers, it's a really an art how you do it. You have to kind of fine tune it to your specific application, depending on how your applications eat up CPU and how long they use it. And is it a CPU? Maybe it's IO. Maybe it's network bandwidth. Maybe it's X and Y. So it might not be CPU bound, Mr. So.
Yeah, so it's a lot of trial and error.
Yes.
Make an assumption, describe a hypothesis. Basically, say, okay, I would expect it to be quicker, have lower latency, have lower loading time when I reduce the amount of used CPU. Then try it, reduce it, measure it, and see if it helps. But very often, and that's something that Darko just said, very often it's not CPU. It really is bandwidth, it's throughput, it's memory utilization. So especially when you have a dynamic site that uses a database, and especially if that database is running on the same server as the web server, and you're not utilizing something like RDS or even Aurora, then it can be all kinds of things. Yeah. So really sorry to have to say this here, because I really try not to, but really it depends. You would have to look. I would have to look into it and see where you could optimize. But on the other hand, there's the thing. Very often you don't really need to optimize. First, measure if you have an actual problem, and if there is a problem, fix it. But maybe there isn't. Maybe.
Maybe there's a bandwidth problem.
Maybe there's a bandwidth problem, yeah.
Oh, you just cut out a little bit there, Dennis. So I think just repeat the answer.
I don't remember. I just got cut out. Yeah, it's just very often when it comes to optimization, very often it isn't worthwhile to really work on optimization, because sometimes it's just a few points of percentages that you can get, especially if it's not a problem. So measure your loading time, measure your latency, and if you go beyond a certain threshold that you consider problematic, then dig in and try and find the issue. And very often you can optimize not by changing metrics, but by really having a close look at your architecture. Maybe not using a relational database for everything, but using a in-memory cache or a key value store for specific pieces of data, where you have scalable persistence mechanisms that really don't affect your latency.
Also use tracing to understand those things. If you really want to get those things, use tracing services like X-Ray, for example, to help you understand where the bottleneck is, where you can kind of loosen those things up. So.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to answer this last question, and then we are going to wrap up. I've got a very nice answer to this, and Darko is actually part of that answer. We have got, at the end of July, the mailer is about to go out, a 4-part webinar series just on this. So what we are doing is we'll have an episode where we do an overview of infrastructure as code and the concepts behind it, what you're trying to achieve, just so you understand the shape of the problem you're doing. Then we've got one session on CloudFormation, one on Terraform, and one on CDK. So, and we will make those available afterwards as well. So, Simon, if you aren't following us on Twitter or LinkedIn, definitely do that. I will be posting the details a bit later. And then also, actually, just before we wrap up, I can paste the link. Let me just quickly unsuspend it. Give me a second. There we go. And this is a super useful link, because what I found is that we often get this question, where do I find out about AWS events? So I'm trying to publish a Medium post once a month with links to everything that we have got planned. And as they get updated, we add to that as well. So definitely head over to that Medium page and take a look there. Simon, you'll see that they are listed there. They don't have a link yet. I should be updating that link I think during the course of today. I just need to catch up. Like I said, my morning was a bit rough, and we will then. But thanks very much for joining us today for this session of AWS Africa Office Hours, and thank you very much to Dennis and Darko for joining us. We will be running this now on a weekly basis, so every Thursday at 12. Feel free to jump up on either Twitch or on YouTube as well. We're actually streaming it to my YouTube channel as well, and I'll start broadcasting that on Twitter a bit more. And yeah, come ask us technical questions, and I'll be rotating people in and out. I'll most likely be here for most of the sessions. I can't promise that I'll be here for every single session, but we will have. I'm also going to be getting some solution architects, and if you have any specific questions, please send them up front on Twitter or on LinkedIn to me, and then I'll bring them up in the chat as well, because we literally are here to answer your questions and try and help you with your challenges you're having and solutions you're trying to build.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cobus, for the invite. It was very fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I'm going to end the broadcast now, and we hope to see you next week or at one of our other sessions. Cheers, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.